Maybe you have already wondered why the most sensitive souls, those that feel deeply and perceive beyond the veil of appearances, are often born in families that seem to be the opposite of everything they represent. Why you, that you loathe that intense inner light? Did you have to grow in the midst of dysfunction, emotional invalidation, and chaos? Carl Jung offers us a revolutionary perspective about this apparent cruelty of destiny. It is not an accident, it is preparation. The pain you experienced was not punishment for some fault of yours. It was the necessary forged of your soul for something much bigger than you can imagine now. Jung understood that the individual process, that sacred trip to become who you really are, rarely begins in comfort and validation environments. For the souls that came here for high spiritual purposes, the transformation needs to begin in family dysfunction itself. It is as if the universe knew that you would need to develop extraordinary spiritual muscles, and the only way to do it would be to place you in an environment that forced you to look for something beyond what was available around you. You were not born in that family by chance. You chose that experience because your soul knew that I would need that specific alchemy. The truth that is rarely said out loud is this: toxic families are frequently the cradle of the most spiritually advanced souls. When love is conditional, when your emotions are invalidated, when they constantly question your perception of reality, something deep happens in your psyche. You look forced to turn inwards, to look for a source of truth that cannot be manipulated or distorted by others. Jung called this connection with the self, that sacred center of your psyche that remains intoka, regardless of chaos around you. And here is the most beautiful paradox. The more your family tried to reduce your light, the brighter it turned. Each attempt to control, each invalidation, every moment in which they made you feel too or wrong, was actually sharpening your ability to discern spiritual. You learned to trust your intuition because it was the only thing you could trust. You developed a direct connection with the divine because it was the only source of unconditional love available. Your sensitivity, which they tried to suppress, became your greatest strength. The ability to feel beyond the masks, to perceive the truth behind the words, to navigate the emotional complexes with a wisdom that goes far beyond your years. Jung understood that when a family cannot offer the unconditional love that the soul needs, something extraordinary happens. The individual is forced to look for that sacred connection in a superior source: God, the universe, the higher self. Your toxic family was not a curse. It was your most intensive spiritual training field. Every day you lived in that dysfunctional dynamic, your soul was being trained for something that people raised in normal environments would never develop. The ability to find the divine in the middle of chaos, to maintain your center when everything around you falls apart. The constant pressure, emotional unpredictability, and systematic invalidation you experienced were not cruel accidents of destiny. They were the precise tools that your soul needed to sharpen their spiritual gifts. Think about it. While other children learn to depend on external validation, you learned to trust your inner voice. While others formed with conditional love, you developed an insatiable thirst for authentic truth. Family dysfunction forced you to develop what Jung would call a transcendent function, the ability to find meaning and purpose beyond external circumstances. Being the black sheep of your family is not a brand of shame, it is a sign of your spiritual power. It means that your soul is so sensitive, so connected to the truth, that it cannot tolerate the falsehood that others accept as normal. You feel what others fear to face, you see what others prefer to ignore. And precisely because you cannot pretend that everything is fine when it is not, you look forced to wake up spiritually long before others. Your discomfort with family dysfunction is not a weakness. It is your soul shouting that you deserve something better, something more authentic. Jung taught us that neurotic symptoms are often attempts to call our attention to what needs to be healed. In toxic families, being the black sheep is exactly that. Yourself refusing to participate in patterns that go against your essential nature. Your rebellion, your sensitivity, your inability to simply adapt, all these are signs that your soul is awake and demanding alignment with your deepest truth. The family may have labeled as the problematic, But Jung would see this completely different. You are the one that is closest to their authentic individuality. Carl Jung revolutionized our understanding of the psyche when he introduced the concept of the shadow, those parts of ourselves and others that we prefer to keep hidden in the darkness of the unconscious. But here is the deep truth that Jung understood. So that a true transformation occurs, the shadow must be brought to light, integrated, not repressed. And you, who were born in a dysfunctional family, received intensive training in the shade from a very early age. Every day living in that dynamic, you were learning to navigate the projections, manipulations, and unleashed wounds of others. To be born in the dark, in a family where the collective shadow was manifested through toxic behaviors, it served you for something extraordinary. Understand that darkness, survive it, and finally transmute it into wisdom. While others can spend decades avoiding their shadow work, you were already being initiated in these mysteries since childhood. The emotional manipulation you experienced taught you to recognize when others are operating from their unleashed wounds. The control they tried to exercise about you showed you the importance of personal sovereignty. Constant invalidation forced you to develop an unwavering connection with your inner truth. Jung understood that this process, although painful, builds what we could call spiritual immunity. Every time your family tried to doubt your perception, every time they tried to make you feel guilty for your limits, every time they project their insecurities on you, your spiritual system was strengthened. You learned not to seek external validation. Because you had experienced firsthand how unreliable it can be, you developed the ability to listen to your inner voice above the noise of the opinions of others. You became immune to manipulation tactics because you had seen them all before. This spiritual immunity is one of your greatest gifts, although you may not have recognized it as such. Your soul sought domain, not on others but about your own internal experience. You learned to defend your truth when others questioned her. You developed strength to protect your peace when others tried to create drama. And more importantly, you cultivated wisdom to recognize when someone is operating since their unintegrated shadow, which allows you to respond with compassion instead of reacting from the wound. Jung would see this as evidence that you are moving significantly in your individuation process. Carl Jung saw the family as the primary environment that molds the soul, and understood that unresolved trauma creates what he called complexes, autonomous energy patterns that influence our behavior from the unconscious. But from a broader, spiritual perspective, your toxic family worked as a karmic classroom, an environment specifically designed to test your soul and awaken it to its true potential. When love becomes transactional and emotions are systematically invalidated, something extraordinary happens. You are forced to a premature spiritual consciousness, a maturity of the soul that goes far beyond your chronological age. In these dysfunctional family dynamics, a specific role that Jung would recognize as spiritually significant: the scapegoat. If it was you who did not settle, who questioned, who refused to participate in the collective denial of the family, then you were chosen, not punished, for this sacred role. The scapegoat of the family is generally the most spiritually advanced, which was born to disturb dysfunction, to be the change catalyst. Your inability to simply follow the current was not rebellion without purpose. It was your soul refusing to participate in patterns that went against your essential nature. Being the black sheep is painful, but Jung would see it as sacred. It allows you to see the family system with clarity that other members cannot reach because they are too buried in dynamics. Your external, although lonely perspective gives you the power to start change, first in yourself and eventually through your example, throughout the family system. Spiritual alchemy occurs precisely when love is withdrawal or when control is authoritatively taxed. At that time, your soul learns to value authenticity above acceptance, to claim your personal sovereignty. Jung understood that family symptoms, drama, dysfunction, repetitive patterns, are often manifestations of unintegrated collective shadow. As the scapegoat, you become the conscious bearer of this shadow, which must process and transmute it. It is a heavy job, but it is also the most important work that can be done. Every time you refuse to perpetuate a toxic pattern, every time you choose authenticity on compliance, Every time you keep your limits despite family pressure, you are doing generational healing work. Your individuation is not just for you, it is a gift for the entire ancestral line, breaking chains that have existed for generations. When you begin to raise yourself spiritually, when your individuation process accelerates and your connection with the self is strengthened, something predictable happens. Toxic people in your life can intensify their criticisms or try to pull you back to the old patterns. Jung understood this as a manifestation of what he called enantiodromia, the tendency of things to transform into his opposite when they reach an extreme. Your growth threatens the illusion on which others have based their identity, and their resistance is not personal. It is their shadow reacting to your light. To navigate this crucial phase, you need specific spiritual tools that protect your emergency. The first tool is what we could call the spiritual umbilical cord, a visualized and consciously cultivated connection with the divine source. Jung talked about the importance of maintaining a living relationship with what he called the self, that archetypal center of totality in our psyche. When you visualize a cordon of golden light connecting directly to the source, whether you call it God, universe, or your superior self, you are creating a divine nutrition channel that cannot be cut by others. This connection allows you to receive love, guide, and strength directly from the source, regardless of what is happening in your external environment. The second crucial tool is to learn not to take the projections of others personally. Jung taught us that what others criticize in you is often a reflection of their own unintegrated shadow. When someone attacks your sensitivity, your authenticity, or your spiritual growth, they are not really talking about you. They are expressing their own fear of those qualities in themselves. Developing this perspective frees you from the need to defend yourself constantly and allows you to respond from a place of compassion instead of reactivity. It is like having an energy shield that allows the projections of others to bounce without penetrating your golden field. The third tool is the sacred practice of distance and limits. Jung understood that not everyone deserves constant access to your energy, especially those who consistently try to reduce your light. Create spiritual security pockets, physical, emotional, and energy spaces where you can process your growth without interference is essential for your individuation. This may mean limiting contact with toxic relatives, creating energy protection rituals, or simply honoring your need for solitude to integrate the transformations you are experiencing. Your day can involve periods of collapse and despair, but Jung would see this as evidence that your soul is expanding beyond the limitations of your old identity. Your presence on this planet is not random. You are part of a global wave of souls, and when the illusion breaks, your true gifts, clarity, sensitivity, empathy, creativity, begin to emerge with a force that can change the world. Throughout this trip through the deep insights of Carl Jung, we have explored a truth that can completely transform your perspective on your family history. To be born in a toxic family was not a curse, but a spiritual initiation designed specifically for your soul. Jung taught us that the individuation process, becoming who you really are, requires that you face and integrate both the light and the shadow, and your dysfunctional family provided you with the most intensive training field possible to develop this spiritual mastery. Remember that every moment of invalidation you experienced was forging your spiritual immunity. Every time you had to look for love and validation beyond your family environment, you were developing a direct connection with the divine that many people never managed to cultivate. Your sensitivity, which was perhaps criticized as too intense, is actually your spiritual superpower, the ability to feel beyond masks, to perceive the truth behind the words, to navigate the emotional complexes with a wisdom that transcends your age. As the scapegoat or the black sheep of your family, you were not punished, you were chosen. Chosen to break generational patterns, to be the change catalyst, to carry the torch of consciousness to places where there was only unintegrated shadow. Your individuation process is not only for you, it is a gift for your entire ancestral line and for the world that desperately needs awake souls like yours. Now I want to hear from you. What part of this exploration about the Jungian perspective of toxic families resonated more deeply with you? How is your day of individuation to be manifested at this time? Have you begun to recognize your family? Wounds as spiritual initiations. Share your experience in comments. Your story matters, and it can be exactly what another soul needs to hear to understand that it is not alone in this transformation process. If this content touched something deep in your soul, if it helped you see your story from a completely new perspective, I invite you to subscribe in the name of the channel and activate notifications. This is a sacred space for deep thinkers, for soul seekers, for those who are tired of pretending that everything is fine when their soul shouts for authenticity. Here we explore the deepest mysteries of the human psyche through the revolutionary lenses of Carl Jung, and each video is an invitation to deepen more in your own process of awakening. Like this video if it helped you understand that your sensitivity is not a weakness, but your greatest strength, and share it with someone who needs to hear that your family pain has a deep spiritual purpose. Remember, you are not broken. You are becoming. Your light is not too brilliant. The world simply needs time to adjust your eyes. Continue connected to your source. Trust your individual day, and never forget that your soul chose exactly the experiences you needed to awaken its true power. Until next time, and you always remember that your light is necessary in this world,